What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings podcast studio. I am excited to be joined today by the author of Ninja Punks Blank Off. We'll use the, the blank, Mr. Jeff Nelson. How you doing today, Jeff?
Good. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, buddy. So we'll get into talking about the book and everything in due time, but I see some awesome comic style artwork behind you. And those are characters from the book, correct?
Yep. So that's Keisuke, the ninja. That's basically, I grew up in the 90s, man. So, ninjas were pretty much everywhere. You had the Ninja Turtles, which I feel like that's kind of a weird thing. Like 80s kids want to claim the Ninja Turtles, and so do 90s kids. There was kind of a war over whether they're
Let's see.
80s thing or a 90s thing. So
The 80s ones were very different Ninja Turtles than the 90s ones.
yeah, they were. I mean, honestly, like that 1990 live action movie is still great. Like I love that movie still. I mean, but there
Yeah.
is one plot hole in it that as an adult I can't kind of get past, and it's this.
All right.
I assume you've seen it, right?
Of course.
Okay, so you know how Raphael fights Casey Jones in the beginning, right?
Yep.
And then Raphael gets beaten up by the Foot Clan, goes into a coma, and he wakes up at April's house in upstate New York, and Casey Jones is there. He doesn't bring up like, hey, this is the guy who beat me up in the park.
Exactly.
Like, there's no mention of it. I was like, hey, as I get older, I'm like, shouldn't there be some confrontation? Like, when you wake up in this. But anyway, yes.
Maybe he was just that concussed.
There
There was a little CTE involved.
Maybe. I mean, if any of the Ninja Turtles have CTE, it's definitely Rast.
I agree with you.
But yeah, so like, I grew up in the 90s back when like ninjas were all the rage. Like, even like the Power Rangers had ninjas in it. Like, there was a whole arc where like they went like Ninjor, which was like, pretty ham-fisted way to say ninja. And they got like ninja powers. So like, I was all about that stuff as a kid. So, I mean, then I played in the 2000s, like the game, the O2 version of Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden, which I think I rage quit. Ninja Gaiden, I think I just
for sure.
Oh god, that game was impossible. But anyway, so basically, I was influenced by that, and I thought basically that ninjas were basically the coolest thing ever. So I knew that when I wrote something, I wanted to evolve them somehow, and that's Keisuke, the ninja character, and that's Brian, who unfortunately, unsuspectingly walks into some Keisuke's business.
Yeah.
And Keisuke is none too happy about it.
Gets a little involved, not of his own free will.
No, absolutely not. No.
Kind of wrapped up in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I believe, given the things that you've said, we probably have a mutual love of comic books as well.
We do.
So were you a typical 90s Image fan and all that kind of stuff? Or what kind of stuff did you get into when you were first delving into comic books?
So, yeah, actually, I have a bit of a weird trajectory into comics. So my first real... So, obviously, I watched, like, the Power Rangers as a kid and the Turtles and all that stuff. But really, my first delve into nerd culture was really through watching Toonami after school as a kid, like, Dragon Ball Z, Gundam Wing, Tenchi, Yu Yu Hakusho, all those things. And I never really got into Western comics probably until like middle school. And I remember I was at a Stop and Shop because I remember in 8th grade at the middle school I went to, when you were in 8th grade, they allowed you to go off campus for lunch. So there was a Stop and Shop across the street from my old middle school. So I walked across the street to the Stop and Shop, and there was a comic rack. And on that comic rack, I don't know if you recall this arc, but it was Uncanny X-Men. And I forget the artist. I still have the comic somewhere in my closet.
I'm pretty sure is this in the 90s?
This is the early 2000s.
So if it's early 2000s, that's probably Joe Madureira's run on there.
Yeah, and so
Joe Mad, who did Battle Chasers. I think that's right around the time that he was on there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure of the artist. Like I know,
Because it
like
was more of a, his art was very anime
yeah.
inspired.
So yeah, I mean, so whomever I remember it was Uncanny X-Men, and it was a 4-issue arc called Dominant Species, which and I picked that up and I loved it. And that was kind of like my first foray into comics. Actually, funny aside, my parents actually didn't want me reading or consuming Western comics
Yeah.
because I remember the '97 X-Men show or the
Yep.
'90s X-Men show. I remember after school, I saw one episode of that. And it was the one where like the Martians come down and they
Yeah.
turn Rogue's boyfriend into a Martian. That
Yep.
scared the crap out of me. And basically, like I had like full on nightmares that whole night. And my parents were like, you know what? You're not watching this. So basically I was kind of turned off to comics for a long time, at least Western comics for that
Right.
reason. But once I got to 8th grade, I was a bit more like, I was a bit more mature and I can handle this stuff. So yeah, that's how I kind of got more into Western comics. And from there, I started reading X-Men pretty much religiously. I got into remember the arc from the early 2000s, Extreme X-Men. I
Oh
love that.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was
Yeah.
a great arc. I mean, the artwork was great too. I read a lot of the Ultimate arcs, like Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man. Like, I really liked how they did with that. They really kind of brought it back to the roots, and
They did. Yeah.
but they also definitely tried to like mix it with like the sensibilities at the time of the 2000s, where they kind of like, I feel like I feel like there was almost a taboo in the 2000s to make against making things too comic booky, which and I think you can almost like encapsulate that in the line from the original X-Men where Wolverine's complaining about the suits and Cyclops is like, well, 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 would you prefer yellow spandex? Like
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
really is. It really does kind of encapsulate. It's like we can make a movie. It's like there's almost actually like you can make a comic movie, but don't call it a comic movie kind of thing.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very taboo. I remember Hugh Jackman talking about that when he had first, gotten the role in the X-Men for Wolverine, and then he was like going into audition for another movie, and his agent was like, "Don't mention that you're in this comic book thing," like because it was like going to be a death sentence for his
Yeah.
career, or so they thought. Here
I
we are,
mean,
all these years later.
yeah. Now you got every freaking actor in the world wanting to be in the next Marvel or DC movie or whatever. Yeah, I know. But from there, I really got um into like on Daredevil a lot. Like I even I read a lot of I read a lot of I read the the Mark Waid arc on that. I read the one from the mid 2010s of that Charles Soule and our mutual friend
Mr.
Ron Garney
Ron. Yeah.
worked on. I haven't seen the new show yet. Is it good?
It is good. Yeah, it's you can tell that they did a lot of reshoots. So
Yeah.
some of the which is good. It's good that they did because the direction it was going from what I heard, it was going to be like a Ally McBeal style courtroom comedy type of thing. And
It's
they did some test, screenings and things and found out people were not into it. People wanted more of that tone from the first season of the Netflix
mhm.
series. And they brought in actually the guy who did the fight choreography for the first season on Netflix.
Yeah.
They brought him in to direct a couple of the episodes that they reshot. So you can tell that they've kind of moved some things around. And one of the episodes is like completely, I think, pieced together from parts from the reshoots and what they originally filmed. And
Yeah.
you can kind of tell a little bit, but no, it's good. There's a couple of slow episodes in there, but overall, it very much has that gritty feel and
Awesome.
the brutalness of the first Netflix series. So I've really been enjoying it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's something I always liked about Daredevil is that he's very morally gray. I mean,
Yeah,
he's not. I mean, he's not like the Punisher, who I consider like he like charcoal in, in terms of his morality. But
definitely.
I mean, I haven't read a whole lot of Punisher. Like he was never like, oh, he was just one of those characters that I got nothing against it. I just never really appealed to me, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, like, but from there I got into a lot. I read a little bit of the Ultimate. I was, I read Ultimate Spider-Man 2. And I read a lot of Deadpool, and it's kind of funny with Deadpool. Like he got more and more funny as the years went on.
he did.
I remember, did you read the '08 version? I think it was '08 to 2012, that run of Deadpool.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Oh,
It's
that was
been
a
a
great.
long time. It's been a long
Yeah.
time though.
But like I feel like he wasn't as ridiculously over the top as he was like now with
Yeah.
in the post Ryan Reynolds world.
Yeah, Ryan definitely brought his own spin to the character, and you've seen them adopt that in the comics and really lean
Absolutely.
into it more with the comedy and the
Yeah.
silly stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's kind of interesting where we see kind of like the interplay between comics and the movies, and kind of how they're starting to influence each other.
Yeah.
Where like Hugh Jackman, like after Hugh Jackman, Wolverine is never short again. Like he's like like I remember I even watched as a kid. I even watched X-Men Evolution. Remember that show?
Yep.
That show was great, and I will die on this hill. I think that show is better than the '90s X-Men cartoon.
Oh,
I,
see, you're gonna get a lot of people upset.
I don't care. I will die on that hill. I don't care. Like I love that show. I mean, but what's interesting here is that I remember the first season I think of X-Men Evolution was released before the movie came out,
Right.
and or the first two seasons I think. But anyway, after the movie comes out and it's a success, you see them start to draw Wolverine taller,
He starts
and he
growing.
and he no longer has the orange suit with the. He's just got like, like a jacket and like and
Yep.
something very similar to how he appears in the movie. So it's kind of funny, almost kind of looking back, how it kind of influenced the comics and the cartoons, almost in real time.
Yeah, it's funny to see too. I just saw a meme, and it was like a little video meme, and it was like, here is the ideal superhero body in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and they show Tobey Maguire, and he's like, he got ripped for it,
He
right? But
did,
he's still a skinny little ripped dude. And
yeah.
then they show Hugh Jackman, and if you go back and look at that first X-Men, like it's funny how small and
Mm-hmm.
skinny he was, and then he just evolved into this superhero physique, and
Yeah,
now it's like everybody, when they do these roles, they're like putting on 30 pounds of muscle, and
probably
actually
using. Sorry,
probably using some enhancement methods to achieve it.
mostly.
Yeah, but
I mean,
it is their job, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, but that's why.
but yeah, you got people like, Chris Hemsworth, that when he is peaked for that Thor role, he looks
Oh
like a
yeah,
friggin' amateur bodybuilder.
oh yeah. I mean, I remember when they showed pictures of was he like a surfer or something like that before he played Thor? Like he was some kind of like surf model, right, or something
Yeah,
like that.
and he was very lanky too. I remember
Yeah.
the first time I ever saw him was in the new Star Trek movie with Chris Pine when that first came out. He was Captain Kirk's dad. So if you go back and watch that
Oh
movie, that's
yeah,
that's Chris Hemsworth. And he's
yeah.
like he's a skinny, lanky dude.
Yeah, I'm not big into Star Trek, but I did see that movie and I actually liked it. And because I'm not really that into Star Trek, it's probably why I liked it.
I thought it was
Because
great. And I
yeah,
am,
because
and I do like the original stuff, but I thought those new movies were really fun.
oh, really cool. Yeah, I mean, I just know that, like, again, I know nothing about Star Trek. Actually, it's funny. Ron actually has told me I should watch it because
Ron
he
is
thinks
very into Star Trek.
he
I see
is.
him pop up on those little streams with his buddies where they're discussing the
Yeah,
old episodes and everything. I actually didn't know that about him, so now
yeah,
I have something to tease him about.
but
But
yeah, it is.
maybe he can tease me because I'm partially named after James T. Kirk because my parents were huge Star Trek
Really.
fans.
See what's funny with me is that my older brother was a big fan of the Next Generation.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid growing up, I didn't even realize there was a Star Trek before the Next Generation. I just thought it was just
Yep.
Picard and everything like that. And when I got into my teen years, I was like, wait, who's Captain Kirk? I thought it was just Picard. Like I didn't realize there was a Star. Like that's how Yeah, I just don't know that much about Star Trek, so here I am.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more of a Star Wars person,
Me too.
but growing up, my folks were into both, and I watched all of that with them. But it always leaned more to Star Wars, so that
Yeah, I
was
mean,
the more of the attachment for me is with Star Wars. That's the stuff I'll get upset over if I'm gonna get upset over anything.
I mean, the Phantom Menace came out on my 10th birthday, so May 19th,
Amazing
1999. So that was the best birthday ever. And
for
Revenge of the Sith
sure.
came out on my 16th birthday. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars has always had like a, it's just what George Lucas was able to do with those six movies. I think, like, and I'm a defender of the prequels. I don't care. Like, I will defend those movies. Like, I
Oh yeah,
really,
I love both, man. I love the
yeah,
original trilogy and the prequels. It's like it's Star Wars, man. I'll even find stuff to find, I'll find things to like about the new stuff that's very flawed too. Like just because I'm excited as somebody who, I was born the year the first Star Wars movie came out. So
yeah,
for me, like just the fact that we have so much Star Wars content available to us,
yeah.
that in and of itself is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I remember, like, I grew up in the early 2000s, so I played KOTOR. I read all those comics, like the KOTOR comics. I read Star Wars on Legacy. Did you read Legacy?
I didn't
Oh, you
check. I
should.
didn't
It's really
catch
good.
that one.
You
Yeah,
should. I think you can buy it in
I've
trade.
heard great things about it.
Yeah, you can buy it in trade, I think. I like your local Barnes and Noble. I think it's available in trade. But anyway, yeah, it's basically, I think it's set like 137 some odd years after Return of the Jedi. And basically, Darth Krayt and this new Sith Order has come down to basically wreak havoc. And what they do with everything is really cool. Where, like, the Empire is still a thing, but they disavowed the Sith. So
Oh,
like
okay,
so the Empire is still a thing and the Emperor is still a thing, and they have what's called Imperial Knights, who are basically just kind of feckless. And then you have the Jedi, who always seem to be on the verge of extinction. And
right,
then, and then you have the Sith. And no, it's actually really good. And you have the main character is Cade Skywalker, who is kind of
okay,
like a Han Solo type character. He basically once the Sith sacked the Jedi Temple, he basically lived in obscurity in, like, the underworld for a while,
okay,
and he developed a very sort of hardened exterior like Han Solo. And the catalyzing action is when Cade's a bounty hunter. To he Through his childhood, not his childhood, he becomes a bounty hunter to survive, and there is a bounty on Jedi, and he captures a Jedi to turn in,
oh,
and that's like the account. It's a really good
I'm
story, man.
gonna I'm gonna check it out, man, for
Yeah, you
sure.
should get into it. Yeah, it's really good.
I
But yeah, I
wanna.
mean, sorry, go
I no, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure that we because I could sit here and talk about Star Wars all day,
ahead.
and that would be the whole podcast. But I want to delve a little bit into your love of writing and how you got into writing, and then I want to make sure we promote the book the way
Yeah,
that it deserves to be promoted because there's
thanks, man.
just that little preview you sent me was really cool, man.
Thanks,
So
man.
how long ago did you have your love of writing develop? Was it when you were a kid and you're starting to watch these shows and read these comics and develop ideas of your own?
Yeah, so I grew up with a speech impediment. You can still kind of hear it a little bit, but it's gotten much better. But it was way worse when I was a kid, and speaking was kind of not the preferred way of communicating. So I could always just write. Like, I don't know, it's one of those things where I could always just kind of do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess when I started consuming all this media, because I didn't have really a whole lot of friends growing up, so I just played video games, read books, read comics, watched shows. Um, and I started to kind of see the all of the overlapping patterns that kind of permeate all these stories. And then I got into, like, the Greek epics of, like, the Iliad and the Odyssey and things like that,
Yeah, I was gonna
and all
say
those
the hero's
classics.
journey, the classic
Exactly.
hero's journey type of formula and everything.
Exactly. I mean, but when you understand what it is, it's really just basic Jungian psychology. And ultimately, what it is, I think it's ultimately instructions on how to achieve the highest version of yourself. I think it's just that archetype encapsulated into a story that you can tell kids to so they too can reach the highest versions of themselves. And ultimately, Carl Jung actually has a very interesting theory of it, where basically the archetype of the hero's journey in and of itself is supposed to mirror the sacrifice of the hero that embarks on it, where essentially the point of the hero's journey is that once you fulfill it, you no longer need it, kind of thing.
Okay.
So it is very interesting to talk about, and like even like I read some you know I was actually reading a lot of Japanese. Um, I read the Tale of the Heke, which is like the Japanese, which is kind of like the Japanese Iliad. It's about the Genpei War, and they even in that toward the end of it, they talk about how basically this embodiment of death came approaching the samurai riding a pale horse, and I'm like, well,
Oh, okay.
that's from the Bible, but
Yeah, yeah.
the problem here is that the is that Christianity would not get to Japan for another few centuries
Yeah,
when
this
that
predated it. Yeah.
exactly. And I think it's things like that, and Joseph Campbell's concept or his hypothesis or theory or whatever of the monomyth, this kind of one story that's in all of our
Yeah.
that's in all of our unconscious,
Yeah, you
and
see
we
it
just
in a
kind of
lot
tell
of
very
cultures, a lot of the
Mhm.
allegories, a lot of the myths and things like retold. Like most
Exactly
most cultures have like a flood type of myth, and like
300 flood
all
myths.
yeah, there's all these different things. Yeah, I've heard some of that because I'm into all the I'm into all the ancient alien stuff and the history. Just the untold history and things. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we've been a little more developed than we have for a longer period of time than we think, and
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff. So I'm familiar with a lot of the stuff you're speaking on.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, I do get into some of that stuff like the flood myths and like the younger Dryas and things like that.
Yeah,
There's
Graham
some weird
Hancock, and yeah.
yeah, I know, but like what's interesting with that is that 12,000 years ago, like every time I read myths, and I've read a lot of myths, every time I see 12,000 years ago, I'm like, well, there it is again, 12,000 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. It's super fascinating.
Keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, I guess what my first foray into actual writing was I actually wrote a story when I was like a kid that started out as a complete copy of Blade, the movie Blade. So
Okay.
I remember, I'm sorry, that first intro of Blade in the first Blade movie is the coolest intro of a character, bar none,
It's
ever.
it's amazing, man.
Oh God, he's
And
like this.
inside, and not to deviate too far, but
Yeah,
on that note, I did not realize how much I needed to see Wesley Snipes on screen again as
that's
Blade because I didn't get that spoiled for me. So
yeah,
when he walked out in the I was like,
yeah.
"Whoa, are
That's
you kidding me?" Like that
yeah,
to me, that was like the coolest part of the movie when he
yeah. I
walked
mean,
out. I'm like, "Holy cow!"
is kind of meh on the MCU as I've been in recent years. I actually did like that movie,
Well, and I
Deadpool
don't
3. It
even
was fun.
think that's not an MCU movie. That's
Yeah,
like a Ryan Reynolds getting to do what he wants movie.
pretty much. Yeah. But no, I mean, I liked, I had a good time with that movie, but yeah, I did. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I wrote this story that initially started out as basically the most blatant copy of Blade you will ever read in your whole life. I was 11 years old. Give me a break. So, but like, I think if you found the original composition notebook of that story, you'd be like, Jeff, this is just Blade. I'm like, I know, all right, leave me alone. But anyway, it developed over the years and it became a pretty cool story called The Abandoned Lands that I want to turn into something someday. It's just kind of always been on this per perpetual back burner.
Right.
Um, and I think from there, I wrote like a novella after college called Mosh, which didn't really go anywhere. I've been basically, I've been always doing, I've been always like on my computer, writing my whole life. I wrote a comedy TV series that I was trying to pitch back about a decade ago called The Founding Fathers, which is hysterical, but also didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I wrote a comic book called Sons of Yellowstone, which had 2 issues. Um, that's how I met Ron, actually.
Okay.
And he gave me some very gracious feedback on that. That
Ron is good at that.
yeah, no, I mean, it
I
was
love how honest he is.
no, he was, but no,
We
like
will say brutally honest.
he was very, very encouraging though, which for
Yeah.
me at the time, I really needed that because like
J-
I always loved writing.
yeah.
And when Ron got back to me and said he liked it, I was like, okay, well, this guy's been working with prose his whole life. So if he thinks it's good, then okay, maybe there's something to this, or
For
maybe I can
sure.
do it.
Yeah, I'm a two-stripe white belt in art under Ron Garney. He has a belt at his house, and I'll send him my artwork to get critiqued, and then it's like, "Oh, you're doing very good," and then he posts on Facebook, "James just earned his second stripe on his art white belt."
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, I wrote 2 issues of Sons of Yellowstone, and honestly, in hindsight, even though Ron gave me some good feedback, I'm not really satisfied that with those 2 comics. I just they needed more work, and I really didn't appreciate. And even though I was always good at writing, I don't think I really appreciated the process of being a writer at that point,
Yeah.
because it is a process. I mean, like with this book, Ninja Punks. I mean, I that was like 9 drafts of work I did. It was a lot. Um, and it was and when I was working with my editor, it was kind of funny. I kind of asked him once, "How do I know when it's going to be done?" And he said, "Do you want me to be honest with you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "When you're sick of it, that's when it's done." And like honestly, I'm glad that everyone's liking the book. Everyone I've given it to is really digging it. I never want to open it or look at it because
Right.
I don't want to open it. It's just like, oh god, like it was just like I think my final read through of it, I copy and pasted it into text to voice app on my computer, and I laid down on my bed and I listened to it 3 times in a row. It took
Oh
me
wow.
3 days. It took me from Friday morning to Sunday night. Just all it was just like after that, I was like, okay, done. We're good.
Moving on.
Kind of, yeah. I was like, okay, I'm sick of it now.
Well, even though you're sick of it, let's tell everybody what it's all about.
Yeah, it's
And because like I said earlier, the preview you sent me was very fun, and it was very much an action part of the book and everything, which it had that momentum and that fun,
yeah.
high paced action to
Thanks.
it. Why don't you let everybody know kind of the overall, synopsis of the book, and then we'll get into like where everybody can support and where it can be purchased and all that good stuff. But let everybody know how this came to be. How did Ninja Punks come to be, and what was the process like? Of you already went into like getting sick of it and finally knowing when it was done, but
Yeah.
how did all this come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we can start about in 2022, spring of 2022. I so basically, I was just coming back from the prior year of moving down to Florida for about 3 days, thinking there was going to be a job for me down there, and there was nothing for me down there. So I
Right.
basically came back up here with nothing and had to reassemble my life, which was a difficult part of my life. But I was driving Uber at the time for money, and I was just kind of like living kind of what I call an outcast life. Like I was just doing Uber and doing my thing and training jiu-jitsu and all this stuff. I was on my sofa in my apartment, and I was just thinking about something one day, and I was like, what if like and like I don't know if one of my favorite animes ever is Cowboy Bebop, which kind of like does mix that like qualities of music with like this kind of like epic story,
Right.
um, which I thought would be a cool idea. So basically, I was like, what if we mix like the like like Japanese history, classic, martial arts action movies with like the underground punk scene, and we called it Ninja Punks and Foss. And I remember I texted that to my friend Martin the second I thought of it. And Martin responds within like 10 minutes, holy F, that's awesome. So
Nice.
I was like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
So it starts out as a screenplay. Like my initial conception of it is that it's going to be a show, and I write two drafts of the show. Um, and I and my friend Mike actually, I was talking to him at a coffee shop, and he's like, "So what do you want to do with this?" I was like, "Well, me being, I kind of get some what you call delusions of grandeur, if you will." So I was like, "Oh well, I assume I'll just show it to someone at Netflix, and they'll think it's the best thing ever, and they'll just let me make it." And obviously, that's not how it works. I'm aware of that, but again, I can get these big ideas in my head
Hey,
and
you got to
get carried
aim
away.
big though, man.
Yeah, and so so, and I've written books before and stuff like that. So I mean, they've not been published, but I've written books before. So it's not like I was opposed to doing a book, but I just didn't really at first picture this as a book. Um, then my friend Mike was like, you know, you should make this into a book. He was like, because what you are thinking about is not going to happen. Which because no one knows who you are. I mean, I have 1,000 followers on Instagram for God's sake.
Yeah, it's
Like
super hard, man. And you know
exactly.
Netflix is getting thrown stuff right and left.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I kind of sat down and thought about that for a bit. I was like, okay. I mean, so in that night I sat down and I started writing the first draft. The first draft was, good Lord, 800 pages.
Yeah.
It was long. Um, and by some weird twist of fate, like it's almost like I almost can't believe how this whole thing worked out. So I follow this guy on Instagram named Eric Coaster, and he's like a guy who's in publishing, and like from what his Instagram said, he's in the publishing world and stuff like that, and he just kind of like posted tips on getting published. So okay, I'll follow him and I'll follow his tips, because
Right.
I want to publish. After I follow him, he follows me back and he slides into my DMs saying, "Have you ever thought about making a book?" And I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
So so
Just out of left field.
at that point,
Yeah.
I Google his name because I'm like, okay, is this guy for real right now? Like, no, I was like, it's never this easy. So
No.
so I Google his name and he's legit. So I'm like, so message him back and I'm like, I mean, yeah, I just finished writing a book and I followed it because I want to get tips on publishing. And she says, I own this hybrid publishing company. And if you want to submit your work to us, we can have a look at it. So we get on the phone and we talk the next day. It was a good conversation. I submitted my book. I hear back about 2 weeks later saying that we want to work with you in making this.
Holy cow, dude.
So,
That
so
had to
yeah,
be like surreal.
it was.
Yeah.
And I worked with an editor on getting it super, super, super refined. Um, my editor, his name was Ken. He was awesome. I remember the first thing he said to me in our first meeting. He was like, "So I want you to tell me where you think this book is." And I'm like, "Well, you think it sucks? Awesome." But no, he was awesome. Like he really like again, like I feel like since we both do jujitsu, we understand that it's a process, right? Like
For sure.
I think something that Ken was really good at showing me was that he showed me kind of the process of jiu-jitsu as it pertains to writing. If that makes sense.
Yep.
I really started to appreciate the process of writing, which I didn't really before meeting Ken. So that was something that I really got from the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, so I, 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 I basically spent all of last summer um, doing revisions like for 4 hours a day, just revising. I probably did like 9 drafts of everything overall. Probably like 2 drafts of the screenplays, and then like about six and then about like 7 or 6 of the actual book.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's and during that whole process, during the month of April of last year, or May, or no, it was March or April of last year, I had to raise 10 grand in a month, which I know we talked about before we started recording, but that was
Yeah.
insane. Like I was as somebody who is not great with money, and who never at his one point has ever had a whole lot of money. The idea of getting 10 grand in 30 days, I was like, well, I am just gonna have to do this. And if I bother some people or if I piss them off, and so be it. I gotta do
Right.
this. And I probably bothered a few people, and that's fine. And I did it. I raised the and I raised the 10 grand to pay for the publishing. I have full rights to the novel. And yeah, so that's kind of the story of how it all came to be.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
The concept of the book, you said it's kind of like that music meets
Yeah. So
ninjas and everything.
sorry. Yeah. So
No, no, it's all
actually,
good.
so yeah. So the actual story of the book, which folks want to hear, it's basically, so I actually read a lot about Japanese history, and before anyone says it, this is not the Triforce. This is actually the symbol of the later Hojo clan of the Kushidai in Japan. There was the early Hojo clan too, which basically ended with the Kamakura shogunate. And then there was the Issei clan that basically occupied that same area hundreds of years later. And because they took over that area of Kamakura, they changed their name to the Go Hojo clan. That was their symbol. So,
So,
so yeah,
so it's safe to say you've done your research.
yes. So anyway, so yeah, but I have gotten some questions about, hey, is that a Triforce? And basically, if I get sued by Nintendo, I'll be like, you can't sue Japanese history, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so basically, it's about these are the two main characters. That's Brian and that's Keisuke. And basically, just the elevator pitches. Brian is at is in New York City at his favorite band's first concert in America. And him and his, say, youthful exuberance wants to sneak backstage to try and meet them. And when he does do so, he finds this guy over their dead bodies. And that is kind of how the whole thing starts.
Yeah. And then it's a whirlwind from there.
More or less, yes. It's
Brian gets wrapped up in some crazy stuff.
oh yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, it's so that's kind of the basic plot arc. I mean, I like to, you know, you know, I like to include a lot of different layers into my storytelling. So there's a lot of very like deep mythological through lines to it, which I think is what makes stories worth consuming. I
Yeah,
think the
for
issue
sure.
is that like people are so focused on like genre and things like that and tropes, which kind of make things seem kind of sterile. Whereas like if you focus on like actual human archetypes and things like that, then you can just kind of record down basic patterns of human behavior. It feels more natural and it feels more human, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I wanted to go back to something that you said about your editor kind of helped you make the connection between writing and jujitsu.
Yeah.
And I find this interesting because, and this is, again, one of these weird coincidence or serendipitous kind of things. So the gentleman I just had on my most recent episode that's out right now is a gentleman who did a ninja autobiographical comic book that he
Interesting.
wrote and illustrated himself. He's in France,
Oh,
and it's called Le French Ninja, and it's about him as a kid. They had this guy who showed up in their city, offered them ninja training as kids,
that's cool.
and so he wrote and illustrated this book. And he's also a BJJ guy, which I did
That's
not
awesome.
know going into it. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Are you
But
a black belt
anyway,
or
yeah,
you're
yeah.
yeah, cool. So me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm on my about 29th year of
Oh,
training
nice.
now. A
I'm on
long
my
time.
I'm on
Um,
my 10th, but yeah. Oh, wow.
but what he was saying is he made the connection between art and jujitsu, and he was saying how he applied principles of jujitsu to his art, and that really helped him. So it sounds like you kind of did the same thing with your writing through the
Yeah.
kind of the help of your editor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and then I kind of like read like basic like philosophical concepts like I love reading the writings of um, of of, of Miyamoto Musashi. And he has a quote, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, once you understand the way in one facet, you will see it broadly in all things. And I think that's kind of what I applied with my writing is that, like, I'm a black belt. I understood that process of becoming a black belt. And then once I was able to understand that, I was able to apply that understanding very broadly to
Yeah.
everything I do. And that's honestly the greatest thing about jujitsu is that you learn to appreciate that basic process, you know?
That's awesome. It's so cool. You always see these correlations between jujitsu and life,
You do.
and how we can take things from our training and apply them in the quote unquote real world of our passions, of our livelihoods and things. So it's always neat to hear when somebody makes that connection and actually is able to make those principles cross over outside of the mat.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of like, that's kind of how the whole story came about. There's a lot of references to Japanese history in it too. There's a lot of references to Shintoism, which is the native religion to Japan. Actually, what's interesting is, and just to go back to what we were talking about, there is actually some very cool stuff in Shintoism where actually, do you know about the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, where Orpheus goes into the underworld to try and save her?
Yes.
There is literally a story like that in Shintoism where Izanami, the female progenitor goddess, dies, and, and and Izanagi, the male progenitor goddess, goes into the underworld to try and save her. So you see these key ideas that are manifesting across the world from each other. It's so cool.
It's cool that you've been able to pull so much from these historical elements
Yeah,
and tales and things, and
yeah,
pull them into your work.
because that's kind of the thing with me, where like I get super in depth with stuff. So like when I was a kid, and there were all these shows about samurais and stuff like that, and I kind of started thinking, well, what were these guys actually like, you know? So I
Yeah,
started reading a lot about the actual historical figures and things like that, and kind of like learning how they lived. And then it's kind of like, and then that kind of gave me this other idea where I was like, well, there's a lot of shows that were made in America and things like that that feature samurai and things like that, but don't really have any historical backing other than that. Even like I know that game that came out that everyone loves, like it came out like 5 years ago, Ghost of Tsushima. That,
mm-hmm.
like that game is not very historically accurate.
Right.
The Sakai clan wasn't even in existence at the time of the first Mongol invasion of Japan, nor was the katana even invented. So it was so like I mean, granted, I'm not going to say that that my book is a historical textbook. It's not, but I don't know. I just kind of wanted to add some degree of of actual history into my work, and that's kind of something that, and that's kind of a, a part of it that I'm actually very cool with. And I think it's cool.
Very cool. Well, before we wrap up, I kind of wanted to ask you a little
Yeah.
bit about if you have any intentions of, getting some of your work back into comics, because
Yeah.
these ideas and the thing, like the character, I'm looking at the character behind you. The characters look so damn cool. It's like
Thanks.
they're like made for comics,
Oh
man.
yeah.
So
So
are
yeah.
there any little aspirations there to see them get
Oh
into
yeah.
the comic book panels?
Oh yeah. So yeah, there will be. Actually, the guy who drew this, you should follow him. His name is Edward Lilly.
Okay.
Um, he's obviously an amazing artist.
Very.
Um, but yeah, we are going to write a comic book. I think it's we're currently kind of going back and forth about it right now. It's going to be about Keisuke's father, and it's actually going to be set. It's kind of going to have I think, folks who played like um, the Metal Gear Solid games
Oh
are
yeah.
going to like because basically it's going to be set during the second taking of Fallujah, and basically ninjas are going to be working with like like Navy SEALs during the second taking of Fallujah. That's going to be the comic book that we're going to be working on together. So
Oh,
yeah,
dude.
so yes, it's coming.
That's awesome. Are you thinking, what route are you thinking of going as far as the publishing of that? Are you thinking of maybe doing a Kickstarter or something?
Most likely, yeah. That's probably the route I'm going to go, unless my book blows up in the next few weeks and I can just fund it myself, which I don't
Yeah.
think. Which I mean, if that happens, it happens. But I know that these things take more time than that usually. So yeah, most likely I will probably do a Kickstarter. Yes.
Very cool. Well, I've had a great time chatting with you
Thanks.
today,
You
and I
too, man.
know there's no shortage of stuff we could talk about. So
No,
I'd like to extend the offer to have you back on in the future.
absolutely. I would love that.
That would be awesome. Well, at the end of the podcast, I like to give you the opportunity to promote anything you want to promote. Obviously, you're going to promote the book. We want to make sure to let people know how they can get it, where they can get it, and where to keep track of you and get all the most up to date information for what you're working on. So the spotlight is yours. Take it away, Jeff.
All right, cool. So yeah, my book is called Ninja Punks F Off or Bleep Off or whatever you want to call it. It's on Amazon. The actual so it's Ninja Punks and it's an at sign, it's an asterisk, is and ampersand. It's it's a percentage sign. So that's the bleep out, and then it's
That's
called
the fill
off.
in the blank for what
Yep,
word you want to use.
yep. You can buy on Amazon. It's available in both hardcover and it's paperback. And yeah, if you buy it, I certainly hope you enjoy it and that you leave a review on my Amazon page. You can follow me at Jeff Nelson Author on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, buddy. Well, hang out with me for a moment while I do my little outro spiel here. I want to encourage everybody to go pick up the book. Jeff has an awesome creative mind, and we always love supporting up and coming creators. So make sure you give Jeff a follow. Go pick up the book. I read the preview. It was a lot of fun. I can only imagine how great the entire book is. So check that out. Like you said, on Amazon, you can pick that up. As for the podcast, you're already listening, so you probably know where to find us. This is a video and audio podcast, so you can find all the episodes on YouTube. People usually have cool stuff in the background that you can look at, like this awesome artwork that Jeff has behind him. So I always encourage you to check out the YouTube version. And you can listen on any audio podcast platform, all the major ones. We are on there. Encourage you to like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. You can find us pretty much anywhere at Nerdy Mewzings. It's NERDYMEWZINGS. And in the meantime, everybody, keep it nerdy.